I hated to hear the news this week that Kurt Busch announced that he would definitely not run any more races. I was hoping maybe we'd have a chance to see him at, maybe a Martinsville or Bristol Lee, and have a chance to leave on his own terms. But obviously, the wreck he had in practice at Pocono last year, the effects continue to be going on. The effects he's had, the concussions. That this was a much more serious injury than I think any of us really realized at the time.
No, it's just really taken its toll, all the hits time after time. And when this car came out, it was extremely rigid. It wasn't just, a 40-something-year-old guy that was sidelined because of hits. Alex Bowman, a young guy, in great shape, went through a very similar thing last year. Fortunately, he was able to bounce back and get on the horse. But, Kurt, I knew if he wasn't back at Chicago for the street course, that was likely it, that it just wasn't going to happen. And, he's resigned himself for what it is. And it's tough because when you look at it, you think about just his contributions to the sport. And more than anything, through the maturation process, he has become one of the top mentors of younger drivers of anyone I've seen. And to really have that talent and be able to share it with, drivers at, say, the Toyota Performance Center. I mean, he went there on his own and talked to Dave Wilson about it after the announcement. And Dave said, he comes in and the kids are just in awe because they are looking at a living legend. And to have that kind of have that attitude and want to give back and want to do something and have that impression on these young drivers coming in and have them skip the pitfalls perhaps that he made along the way, it's only going to, expedite their learning curves.
Yeah, I thought two of the things that Kurt said to us at Daytona were significant. One is that he's still going to be trying to work with the doctors and get to a point where he can race something again. It's just not going to be a cup car. And so, he's still motivated to try to get back to 100%, which clearly he's not at this point. The other thing that I thought was interesting in retrospect, he was saying that when he was qualifying at Pocono, he was trying to become a member of the 30-30 club. And Kurt is a guy who loves baseball and he looks at stats in a baseball kind of way. And he had 29 poles, 34 cup wins. And so, one pole shy of the 30-30 club. He was trying to win the pole at Pocono, said maybe he pushed it over the edge a little too much, backed into the wall, and that was the end of things. But I just thought that was interesting because he's very aware of his own stats, and he and his brother Kyle will go out as the winningest sibling combination in the sport's history, I believe.
Well, and you look at what his legacy is, and I think he's a surefire Hall of Famer, no doubt about it. He won a championship. But to me, and you talked about it, Lee, the problems he had more on a personal level earlier in his career, which affected his standing as a driver and the places he was at. But as he reinstated himself into the sport, for lack of a better term, everywhere he went, he made the team better. You think when he was at Phoenix Racing, he made them better. When he went to Furniture Row, he made them better. Every place he went, he made the team better, and he won in every car make that he drove in.
He turned Furniture Row into a championship-winning organization, not for him, but for Martin Truex Jr. They had all the parts and pieces. They needed the driver, and he was it. He thought he'd have greener pastures over at Roush Racing and went over there, and it just didn't turn out the way that he anticipated. But you're absolutely right. No matter where he went, and the suspension, I mean, in retrospect, look how trumped up those charges were, because you saw the person who made the accusations and what happened to her. So I feel bad for him that he had to go through that, because it was, I don't know, it just another tough thing, but something he overcame, right? He reinvented himself.
He absolutely did.
And he's a guy who continued to reinvent himself and continued to give back. And I think, as you said, probably his greatest legacy is going to race teams and making them better. And, Ross Chastain will tell you that happened when he went to Ganassi. Kyle Larson will tell you that when he went to Ganassi, when he went to 2311. I mean, you just look at the list all the way down. And, even when he went to Team Penske, they were okay. But I mean, that was, they had kind of relied on Rusty for so long. And he was the new kid coming in, which was tough in itself. But, it was so funny because as much, for the petulant child that he was when he got here and all the feuds that he got in with the veterans like the Jimmy Spencers and what have you, here the last, 5 years during driver introductions, he was beloved. And, did you ever think you were going to see that during his Roush or Team Penske day?
Well, this was a guy where Jack Roush kept a baseball bat in the hauler in case Kurt destroyed it, and then he was gonna take the bat to Kurt. Basically, behavior cost Kurt his job at Roush Fenway. It cost him his job at Penske Racing, and it probably led to the suspension because people looked at his past and said, okay, obviously he was not, the suspension was premature, and I think everybody at this point realizes it. But from the kid who would basically freeze up and freak out when the red light on the TV camera went on, to a guy who is now very polished and very at peace with himself, I think the transformation has been very nice to see and pretty remarkable.
Well, and fortunately, he's not going anywhere because we'll still see him because he's still going to be helping out at 2311, and we see him at the track all the time anyway.
And he's probably going to be doing some races in the booth on some of the National Series stuff.
So, but think about we're not only whatever team NASCAR-wise he went, look at what he did in IndyCar. Look at what he did when he went and piddled around in NHRA. I mean, he can get in anything and make it go fast.
Yep.